Welcome to Design, Build, and Deliver with Heart Companies, where we dive deep into the world of life science with leaders who decide, design, and deliver the next generation of pharma and biotech facilities. I'm your host, Samir Gondalia. Thanks for joining me as I interview visionary leaders shaping biotech and pharma facilities from C-suite executives to project decision makers. Hear real stories, industry trends, and actionable insights to help you build your facilities and your career smarter, faster, and better. Let's continue with Design, Build, and Deliver with Heart Companies. My guest in this episode is Richard Shah. Richard currently serves as a project director and heads up the US Global Engineering Department as WuXi Biologics. He has supported and directed the design, installation, commissioning, and qualification of major biomanufacturing facilities, including the landmark MFG6 and MFG7 production plant in Dundalk, Ireland. His leadership has been central to achieving aggressive timelines, establishing hybrid stainless steel and single-use production capabilities, and implementing next-generation facility design approaches that enhance scale, flexibility, and global supply readiness. Richard has a BSc in Science from University College Dublin and a PhD in Organic Chemistry and Pharmacognosy from Trinity College Dublin. He is a senior biopharmaceutical engineering leader with more than 2 decades of experience guiding global pharmaceutical and biologics manufacturing, MSAT, and capital projects. Over the course of his career, Richard has held influential roles at Pfizer and Bristol Myers Squibb, contributing across downstream processing, engineering, and project leadership and technical operations. His portfolio spans areas such as advanced process equipment engineering within upstream and downstream processing and utilities, and expertise that has supported both clinical stage and commercial manufacturing programs. With over 24 years of experience in the biopharmaceutical and pharmaceutical sectors, his contributions continue to strengthen WuXi Biologics' global manufacturing network and support the company's commitment to accelerating the development and availability of life-changing biologics worldwide. Richard and I have had a few years of overlap during our Wyeth Pfizer days. I immensely enjoyed my chat with Richard. Hope you do too. Here's Richard Shah. Good morning, Richie. How are you doing today? Thanks for joining us on Design, Build, and Deliver with Heart Companies.
Good morning, Samir. How are you? I'm very well. Thank you very much.
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate and we are really looking forward to hearing from you about your perspective for global life science projects. Let's first talk about you. You are an engineer. You used to be a designer. You used to design skates and you worked in that space. And now you are head of global engineering for a global company, WuXi Biologics. You are overseeing global capital projects. How did you make that transition? Because it's not a straight line.
You're absolutely correct. Maybe if I can take it back a little bit further than that. So I'm actually a chemist by trade, like an organic chemist by trade. So I got my PhD well over 20 years ago now at this stage in Trinity College in Dublin. And of course, when you come out of university, you seem to think that the only thing out there is either academia or research and development. Okay. Yeah. And thankfully, it's not just that. Like there's a whole world of experience involved in. So for me, I did get into a company to do some R&D work. Didn't really like it too much, and then moved into the manufacturing environment. So I worked for a company called Leo Pharma in Crumlin in Dublin. Worked there as a manufacturing supervisor. Did that for 4 years, and then eventually I was an opportunity came about with PAL Life Sciences. They wanted me in as what they call this bioprocessing specialist, right? So this is a technical specialist role where you're basically speccing out processes or unit operations. And as part of that, you're doing some small scale studies, but then you try to scale that up then with the relevant equipment. So that was my kind of first part, really, or first part where I started getting involved in skid design. Okay, the first experience I had with skid design. And then you learn the basics from there, right? So, reading P&IDs, understanding flow paths. There was a lot of design element associated with skid in terms of pump sizing, the valve sizing, instrumentation, and all that sort of stuff. So that was great. And I really enjoyed working at PAL there. Eventually moving on then to a role then as my kind of first process engineer, real process engineering role for a company called Elanco, which were a veterinary company in Sligo. And I worked there for about a year, just over a year before moving into Grange Castle. So I think one of the things that attracted me to Pfizer in Grange Castle was they were in the middle of an expansion project, and they were looking to do a brownfield expansion in one of the fallow spaces that they had in the plant. And I was asked to take up the design lead role for downstream operations. So there you're not only getting involved at the very start, of construction, of design, but then you're kind of mobilized and move on into the other fields of project delivery, which is then CQV. So you get to see the whole gambit of
right, or start to finish.
Start to finish. So I was involved in that. I then got moved on to some other smaller tech transfer projects as well, projects rather, within Pfizer, before then moving then again into a different field, into MSAT. And so I moved to a different company, BMS and MSAT, and then moved on then to WuXi, then to do what I'm doing now. Funny story is that when I went to WuXi, originally I went in to come to the manufacturing area. So I was there as a manufacturing associate director. And at the time, we were in the middle of building a plant in Dundalk, in County Louth in Ireland. And it's a huge site, massive site. You'll have 3 manufacturing facilities in there. I was asked to, as part of the manufacturing, develop the manufacturing department for one of the plants there, MFG7. Long story short, because you're involved in all of, stuff, particularly from the very start, you got a lot of involvement in the engineering side of things. So again, a lot of construction, a lot of design. And I kind of fell in love with it again. So, I think this is where I want to be. Initially got involved in the CQ, obviously got involved in the design, the skid design, heavily involved in the skid design, the process design, the utilities that are going to support the manufacturing operations before then moving into the CQV field. Where then, started operating or started looking after all of CQV for CQV delivery for MFG7, and then subsequently for the 2 other plants that were going to be qualified there, 6.1 and 6.2. From then, I was offered a position in global engineering. And I'm now actually looking after being the project director and getting the delivery of the MFG11 facility here in Worcester. In Boston. And that's what I'm currently at the moment.
That is perfect. So you kept acquiring new skills and kept saying yes to new opportunities, and which has brought you all the new opportunities. So that's a really good story and moral, that if there's an opportunity, say yes, whether it's a job opportunity or an opportunity to learn something new.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect segue to my next question, which is, you are head of global engineering. You work out of Ireland, but you are doing this big project for WuXi Biologics in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
This is a multi-year project, few $100 million to say the least, almost all the disciplines. You also work on other global projects in WuXi, because WuXi is a global conglomerate. What are the differences when you work for life science capital projects in different regions? And what are the similarities? And I'm talking about culture, compliance, regulatory. We all try to do the same thing, but I know there are some subtle differences, if not big differences, when you work on different life science, particularly GMP projects in different regulatory areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just to clarify, I don't head up all of global engineering. I head up the US office in global engineering. It's a minor point. So there are definitely differences, right? And they range from the safety aspect all the way to project design, project execution. In Ireland in particular, there are, I'm trying to think of the name now. I can't even think of the term. My mind's just gone completely blank. There are real strong safety provisions you have to put in place as a safety platform, safety experts that you have to bring in, designated safety experts that you have to bring in, that are fully regulated to meet Irish safety standards during construction. Well, I can't think of the term off the top of my head. It's just completely gone for now. In the US, obviously, you have OSHA requirements here that you need to adopt and satisfy and then make sure are safe. The one key difference that I have noticed, though, between projects in the US and projects going on, say, in Ireland, particularly during construction phases, it's very union based in the US. It's not something I would have traditionally been used to working in Ireland. Okay.
Okay.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but
No, it's an observation.
it's just something that is different. It's just an added nuance that you have to configure and you have to recognize and you have to work with when you're dealing with trades and subcontractors and along with the construction management firm that we deal with at the moment. The biggest difference I have noticed though between the two environments, the cost differentials, right? I think the cost of construction in the US is higher than certainly in Ireland. You know, the labor costs are particularly higher. Material costs I have noticed are getting high as well in the US. Tariffs may be one of the key reasons for that. Power indexes, purchasing power indexes that you can compare and contrast against. And, you know, typically Ireland costs maybe anywhere from 60 to 75% less than what they would be inside the US. As you go further afield, if you go into the likes of China, for instance, I think that differential is even greater. Again, it could be as much as 30% less than so it's just recognizing those up front and understanding those and just making sure that, you know, we don't leave ourselves in a position where that hasn't been factored in when you are looking to move into a project. You can't always compare apples with apples, right? That there are subtle differences that you need to take into account.
Yeah, and also you need to make sure that you build a project, but after the project is done, you are competitive with your competitors. You can produce a good quality product cost effectively for the patients, and all these things need to be considered up front. You can't find out after 5 years that, oh, we are a bit 30% more expensive and we will have to lose the market or something. That's very interesting. So how would a global company like WuXi Biologics go about picking a site, whether it's global, because now COVID has changed the supply chain. How does WuXi go about picking a site for global market? And how about for America? So America is like a continent pretending to be a country. It's huge geographical area, land, infrastructure. It's very different if you just go 200 miles in America. How does WuXi pick a site globally and in America?
Yeah, so look, a lot of that is based down to company strategy, right? As how they want to do their business. Typically, as WuXi is a CDMO, we would tend to build facilities that cater to the market in which that plant is based in, right? So, for plant in China, it's there for the Asian market, you know. And for building a plant in the US, it's for the most part for the US market, and build a plant in Ireland or in Germany or wherever, then it's obviously based for the European market for the most part. For the most part. In terms of site selection, again, there's a number of factors that you need to take into account, right? Tax incentives. You need to look at, you know, what labor force, what the labor market is, how strong is it? You know, do you have the right skills or labor resources available?
Just talking about it earlier about finding the right talent.
Yeah, exactly. So your cost base has to be such where, you know, if it's too restrictive or it's too expensive, okay, you know, you need to take that into account. You know, you need to understand the logistics of building in a particular area, of manufacturing in an area, of shipping from that area as well. You know, what's the infrastructure like? You need to look at certainly the availability or the robustness of the market of which you want to deal in as well, right? So there'll be a business development piece as well in that, you know, if the market is buoyant enough, if there's a strong demand for products and there's not a huge supply, that obviously plays a part in determining whether or not you're going to move into a particular area. But then when you drill down into that and you identify a particular location, then obviously site selection is key. So, you know, typically location to ports, to airports is a key factor. As I mentioned earlier, tax incentives on a particular site does play a key role there, right? And, you know, in Massachusetts, for instance, in Worcester, there are many tax incentives which companies like WuXi can avail of and are indeed attempting to avail of.
Right.
So there are a multitude of different things you need to look at. key to all of that, though, is obviously if you're looking to pick a site, it needs to be big enough, it needs to be fit for purpose for what you are looking to do. So we as a company have to understand what the requirements of that plant need to be. How big was it likely to be? Have at least some idea of what the capacity requirements are going to be for that plant, electrical supply, water supply, how efficient is that, all these factors play a part in determining then what is an ideal role or an ideal site for you to base your operations from.
Right. I'll also add one more thing, that we also have to look at a longer horizon than other industries. Like, so we built a facility here in Worcester, Massachusetts, for example. What would this look like after 20 years? What would Worcester, Massachusetts look like after 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah.
We don't have the luxury of a tech company where you build something and sell it in 5 years and it doesn't have to exist there, right? So we also have that time frame that, okay, is this sustainable here? The next generation of people and talent and other folks that you need, you can find it here. One question about that you mentioned, because all of this ties into speed to market. That's ever since I joined this industry, that has been the keyword, speed to market, and for obvious reasons, market exclusivity and all that. Richie, what I have noticed is that the conversation around speed to market has changed a lot since before COVID and after COVID. We still talk about it, but what we talk in terms of bullet points about how to do speed to market, that has changed. What are your thoughts on that? What are your observations on the change in conversation of speed to market since COVID?
Yeah, I think, speed to market is definitely something that is at the forefront of every decision when it comes to construction and project delivery. We have situations there whereby we want construction to be done as quickly as possible. We want design to be done, as quickly as possible. We want construction to be done as quickly as possible. When that is done, we're now in the CQV arena. Okay, what can we do to speed up CQV? What can we do to streamline CQV effort? And then, from that, then you've got, the GMP release, and then obviously going into GMP operations then of your particular process within your facility. For us in particular, enablers of those aspects of a project that helps speed to market, that help us get online quicker, are keys in digital platforms for during construction, where it's dock control, using BIM models for construction, I suppose coordination. We moving into the actual process itself. Then you still have conversations even out to this day of, do we stick with stainless steel or do we move to single-use technologies to kind of bring that over the line? And again, it depends on what the return on investment is on the plant, right? How many batches you anticipate, you're going to need to make in order to get your return on investment back quickly. I know there's been studies done in the past where typically anything to maybe, 15 to 20 batches, single use becomes probably a little bit prohibitive in terms of costs. Okay, and stainless steel is the way to go there. But you're weighing that up against, really the amount of work needed for bringing in stainless steel. You've got the high capital costs, you've got the whole validation efforts associated with using stainless steel.
And cleaning and steaming.
Clean and steaming validation, very cumbersome, very time consuming.
Right.
Very much needed, but it does impact in how quickly you can get these things turned around. So what I have seen, Samir, in particular, is more of a hybridized approach to building of pharmaceutical plants, where traditionally now, and I'm saying traditionally because I've seen this quite a bit now, upstream tends to be very much single use. That cell harvest, given just the volumes of material you need to process, still is stainless steel. And then as you go into downstream, some unit operations remain as stainless steel, really around the volumes that you're looking to process, the flow rates you're looking to run at, because there are limitations with using, obviously plastics when you're running at higher flow rates or higher pressures. So, I'd say some unit operations, you can definitely continue using stainless steel chromatography operations absolute case in point there. And we still have limitations, I think, in terms of column sizes and, and what piping diameters we can use, particularly on our larger volume applications or larger protein content applications, if you're looking to get stuff through very quickly. TFF skids, very much still stainless steel.
Mm-hmm.
But the other unit operations that you have on the downstream in now, like your virus inactivation, virus filtration, even your intermediate drug fill operations, your bulk fill operations, there now very much moving into the single use arena, which definitely speeds things up in terms of qualification, in terms of getting the equipment ready for use by the manufacturer. But your rate limiting step, if you're using stainless steel, in terms of getting stuff, will always be a stainless steel components. Process is very much restricted then in terms of releasing the entire process on your stainless steel piece because of the points that you've already mentioned. Clean and validation, steam and validation.
Right.
All these aspects you do need to take into account. Dirty hold times, clean hold times. All these things need to be configured and understood and recorded and validated before you can go ahead and officially release that entire process. So, the processing equipment side of things is from what I have noticed is very much more of a hybrid setup, right? I think for smaller volume applications, absolutely, I think single-use technologies is definitely leading the way there. The technology has advanced so much. Instrumentation has been significantly improved as well. And I think as well, the regulatory authorities have certainly become more amenable to these technologies now in terms of what we need to do in terms of qualification, getting it over the line quickly. There's, with biologics in particular, pre-viral, post-viral segregation is absolutely key as well, right? Single-use technologies gives you that, I suppose, assurance and protection for segregation, right? You've now got fully closed operations. Quite difficult to achieve using just pure stainless steel on its own, right?
Right.
So I'm not quite sure if I've answered your question.
No, you did. I think I'll just add one more. Yeah, I'll just add one more thing is that the best answer is it depends because the process that we get, the science is changing so fast that we need that flexibility, we need that future proofing where you can have multiple facilities. So if you have this product, well, it might make sense to do more single use because you are running against time. In other cases, it might make stainless steel might make sense. In other, hybrid might make sense, right? So it's case by case studies. But the key is flexibility and future proofing. I'm hearing a lot about future proofing, by the way. When you talk to people, future proofing, essentially it's flexibility. You give yourself flexibility regardless of the new process or new modalities come. You don't really have to tear down a wall to have a new manufacturing process, right? You can make few changes and with some simple validation, you can go about it. I want to talk to you, Richie, about design drivers in biopharma because I know that subject is very close to your heart. Now, design drivers, it may mean different thing to different people. It's not about aesthetics. It's not even about engineering, right? It's about what the owners think is important for a particular project. If not for a particular facility, it can be talent, it can be compliance, it can be cost, it can be speed to market, what we talk about. What does design drivers mean to you and how does WuXi chooses, what design drivers WuXi chooses for looking at different projects or the project you're working at Worcester?
Yeah, sure. I can give you the Worcester project as an example. So 3 key design drivers for us, right? In building the facilities, we really want this facility to be factory of the future. Okay. And to ensure that we need to obviously select technologies that will clearly allow us to be that. So the 3 areas that we look at, particularly for designing of this facility in terms of drivers, is ESG. Okay. So solar power, water, reclamation, making sure, there's, keep energy requirements down to an absolute minimum, making sure, our Wi-Fi generation, for example, you can go from the standard Wi-Fi sills where we're now moving towards ozonated Wi-Fi generation. As an example there, right? All to satisfy our ESG requirements. And even to the point whereby the type of cement, the type of concrete that we use, we want to try and use low carbon concrete, again, to satisfy our carbon footprint requirements. So we are very much keen on making that plant environmentally, neutral as much as possible. Right? That's the design piece we want to go to. Moving on to the next step then, and we've already touched on this between stainless steel and single use. In an ideal environment, we would probably prefer to have single use across the board, right? As you very well communicated there, we've, speed to market, flexibility. You need to be agile, right? And bringing in new processes. You need, as a CDMO, we want to be able to turn around equipment very quickly to suit a particular process. Okay.
Right.
Single-use technology allows you to do that, right? It's a quick swap out and away you go. So we try to incorporate as much single-use technology as possible, but there are certain unit operations that will remain as stainless steel. We just can't avoid that. And then the last piece then is satisfying, not satisfying, but trying to be Pharma 4.0 savvy.
Okay.
So, digitalization is a key for us. We want to use electronic batch records. We want to use RFID tagged equipment that allows just to scan through a barcode and automatically then populates onto your EBR. We're even looking at bringing in a digitalized CTV platform, remove paper completely, so that we can qualify everything electronically. And again, that will speed up the review and approval process, ensures that nothing gets left behind if paper-based. We've all experienced it, where a page gets missed or whatever. So these are all the aspects that we take into account when we're looking for, driving to a particular design philosophy to satisfy what we're looking to do here in Worcester. Right. And we get this done right here, it'll be continuously rolled out then for other plants then in the future.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about, actually I can still ask you because you already answered half of that question. I was going to ask you, what do you think what do you think an efficient pharma facility, life science facility will look like in 10 years from now? And the first aspect was digitalization, less paper, more digitalization. And you already answered that question in the capital project stage. But if you talk about pharma facility, what are the changes? What are the new technologies, new gadgets you see, not just when you work on the project, but when you go to conferences, when you talk to peers, that you think will change how a pharma facility, life science facility looks in 10 years? I hear a lot about AI machine learning. I know it has a lot of application. I still haven't seen a case study of AI application in a life science facility. Maybe there is. I'm just not aware of it, right? So what are your thoughts in terms of these new technologies?
Yeah, I think 10 years, I think AI will definitely become a key component of facilities in the future. I would tend to agree with you. I haven't really seen much in terms of AI at this moment in time, right, within any life science projects that certainly I've been involved in. Certainly others that I've spoken to as well, there has been a huge AI piece to it.
Right.
There is minimal interaction, I suppose, in terms of scheduling, for example. So there is scheduling software out there that can allow you to use that AI piece in terms of reconfiguring your process based on signal feedback from particular unit operations, or valve opening that's configured to a particular step, and then that feeds back to the schedule software that you're going to use. I do see process analytical technology really accelerating as well, right? Real-time analysis. We've already seen that, particularly on the upstream area. I do see that moving into downstream as instrumentation, as methods of I suppose software analyzing the information and validating that, and that confidence starts to build up, particularly on the downstream end, where as that becomes more and more the norm, more and more of that technology will get adopted. I think certainly from my perspective on the downstream side, certainly still seems more manual. Okay, samples still need to be taken. Analysis can be done and will be done on an electronic format, but I think there's still that conservative nature within the industry. Well, let's just back it up by taking a sample and actually physically checking offline, right, to confirm the readout. But I like to think as the technology begins to improve, and particularly over the next kind of 5-10 years, we'll move away from that, and it will be very much dominated by software, AI release, intermediate release, bring it on to the next step. That'll all be done automatically.
Right. Yeah, I think the problem with AI in pharma, from my this is just my 2 cents, is that AI works on data. You need good quality data, properly tabulated, and you can take that data and create some wisdom and some artificial intelligence. For our industry, it's very difficult. Good data is confidential; they are not available in public. And the data, for example, if you need for capital project, is scattered. Right? It's in notebooks of people like you or other project managers is in the head. It's not like an Excel spreadsheet which you can feed to an AI machine. If you look at AI where they implement on social media or retail, well, there are lots of data available already in good tabulated format, and it's just matter of creating. So I think in AI in pharma space, if somebody starts a business about tabulating and producing good quality data, that might be a better business than creating AI tools, because creating AI tools is simple, not easy, but simple.
Mm.
But data is a little difficult to find good quality data in our industry. I
It
think
is
that's the bottom.
certainly. I mean, what we are beginning to see now is AI getting involved in deviation review, analysis, and that's coming more into play there. But I would tend to agree with you. It's more on the analytical side where I think AI is going to come in rather than the actual processing component part, right? I
Right.
think the processing side will always, I think personally anyway, I think will always run through or pre-configured running logic of code that'll just
Yeah.
run step by step by step, right? But yeah, the analysis of data will, I think, honestly, will play more and more of a role in determining then whether or not you move on to the next step within that operation and
Yeah.
remove the human element away from it then, all right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing, right? It avoids transcription errors that,
Right.
happen as people document these things. It avoids human intervention in terms of making the wrong judgment call,
Right.
misconstruing what we read out, right? So
Right.
obviously that's something that's very strong.
So, Richie, this has been really, really fascinating. Let's talk a little bit about you. What are some of your favorite books, movies, TV shows? I was going to say Peaky Blinders, but that would be too lazy on my part. But tell us some of the things that you enjoy.
I don't really watch too much TV. I do enjoy playing a lot of golf. Right,
There you go. Okay,
I
golf.
was I was quite sporty in my young age, and as I've gotten older, soccer was definitely my first love, and then unfortunately I can't play football anymore. So golf is my main love there. In terms of TV programs, the ones that I have watched, I tend to like watching the old shows. I do like Peaky Blinders. Right, I really do like.
Who
But
doesn't?
yeah, but the classics like Breaking Bad, Prison Break, all these
Yeah.
ones, they're very much, I do love a good prison movie. I really, really
The
do.
Shawshank Redemption.
It's a classic, of course. It's
Which one?
the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I just said the same thing. The
Yeah,
Shawshank Redemption. Right.
yeah, absolutely wonderful, wonderful movie. But yeah, I think for me in particular, and unfortunately, I don't read enough books. Other than just your journals that come through, but I do want to start reading more and more books. I'm probably like every 18-year-old that's out there now, even though I'm far from 18, where everything is on the screen now, and I'm just
Right.
flicking through and just reading stuff in the news, or you go
Right.
on TikTok or whatever, and so I'm as guilty as that as anybody else.
Yeah, but that is the thing. It's like it's hard to find that 1 hour of uninterrupted time where you can just sit down and read a book. But we only have like 5 minutes between calls, or 2 minutes
Yeah,
here, or five, like sending letters. And phones are so easy and so convenient. So that's the other thing. If somebody wants to get in touch with you after this conversation, what's the best way to get in touch with you? LinkedIn, email, some other way you prefer?
yeah, it's fine. LinkedIn, email, cell phone. It's all good. There's no problem at all. I'll always answer my phone.
Okay. And your email is richard.shah@wuxibiologics.com.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, I'll put it in the show notes. And Richie, before we say our goodbye to our listeners, do you have any last ask, any words, any suggestion for us?
Not really. Just to say thank you very much for the time speaking to me. I hope you found it remotely interesting.
It was very
No,
much so.
thank you. And yeah, Just wish everybody the best in the future. And as I say, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm absolutely available.
Richie, this was really great. Thank you very much. I learned a lot, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. But this was, I'm glad we could finally set this time and do that. Thank you very much, man, for all
Thank you
your
thank you
wisdom.
again, Samir. Thank you.
And you have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on Design, Build, and Deliver with Heart Companies, where we explore the people, projects, and ideas shaping the future of life science facilities. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss upcoming episodes with more leaders from across the biotech and pharma world. To learn more about Heart Companies, our integrated design, engineering, and passivation services, visit heartcompanies.com, that is HART companies.com, or connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm Samir Gondalia. On behalf of everyone at Heart, thanks for listening. Until next time, build with purpose, deliver with pride.